9.
You know, usually when a massive natural disaster hits, there is a very predictable rhythm to how you and I process it.
Right.
Like the news breaks, the seismologists or meteorologists weigh in with all the data, we calculate the financial damage, and eventually humanity bands together to rebuild.
Exactly. It's a whole cycle.
Right. Think about how we process news today. A pandemic hits, a regional war breaks out, or an economy crashes, and our first instinct is just to adapt.
Yeah.
We try to, life hack our way through it and pretend it's normal.
Oh, absolutely. We contextualize the chaos. We put it in this neat little box labeled Mother Nature acting up, or maybe geopolitical friction.
Yeah, totally.
And that gives us this psychological illusion of control. Like, if we can measure it, well, we feel like we can manage it.
But then you step into the apocalyptic narrative of the book of Revelation, specifically chapter 6, and that whole predictable rhythm, it just evaporates completely. Gone. We are looking at a text describing a global collapse that is so total, so physically and structurally absolute, that the very concept of human resilience or, rebuilding just becomes completely obsolete.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of an infrastructural and psychological shattering. We are talking about the breaking of the sixth seal.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you directly into the terrifying narrative found in Revelation 6.1 through 17, alongside the parallel warnings in Matthew 24.
It's some heavy source material today.
It really is. And to do this, we are pulling from a fascinating stack of sources. We're synthesizing biblical scholarship, historical theological commentaries, and, surprisingly enough, modern geological and atmospheric research.
Which is where it gets really fun, honestly.
Right. Our mission today is to unpack the exact physical mechanics of the 6 specific disasters triggered by this single seal. We want to show you how total infrastructure failure forces all of humanity, from the most powerful global leaders to the most disenfranchised citizens, into this massive panic that shatters their reality.
But to really grasp the weight of this event, you kind of have to understand exactly where we are in the timeline of this prophecy.
Yeah, context is everything here.
Exactly, because this isn't the beginning of the end. In the narrative, we are already deep into the apocalypse.
So let's set that stage for you. We have passed the midpoint of the prophesied 7-year apocalypse. We are entering the final 3.5 years, a period that the ancient texts refer to as the Great Tribulation.
Right.
And the geopolitical landscape is entirely dominated by a single figure, the Antichrist, who is in full global power.
And the texts note that he has desecrated the temple in Jerusalem by this point.
Right. For those unfamiliar with the term, this event is known as the abomination of desolation. It's essentially the ultimate act of sacrilege in this prophetic timeline, where he's declaring himself above all divine authority.
And he isn't just a political or military ruler. The historical theology emphasizes that the world passionately worships him. Yeah. Simultaneously, a horrific worldwide persecution of Jews and Christians is fully underway. Anyone refusing to align with this new global order is actively being hunted.
But despite all of this unprecedented global tyranny, and despite the devastations of the first 5 seals, which, brought war, famine, and death, the general populace has somehow normalized it all.
They really have. They are just carrying on with business as usual.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because up until now, humanity has basically treated the first 5 seals like a cosmic snooze button.
A cosmic snooze button. I like that.
Right. They just roll over, attribute the global chaos to bad weather or, supply chain issues or regional conflict, and they just go right back to sleep. But the 6th seal, that is the alarm that physically cannot be ignored.
No, you can't sleep through this one. The catastrophic nature of the 6th seal forces the world to finally acknowledge what is actually happening.
It strips away that whole illusion of random bad luck.
Exactly. It forces them to recognize the day of wrath.
Okay, let's talk about that term because it's the major catalyst here. Moving from humanity's state of utter denial directly into the physical event that just completely shatters it. What exactly is the day of wrath or the day of the Lord?
So the day of the Lord is a very specific biblical expression. It describes these times when God uniquely, and often very dramatically, intervenes in the affairs of men specifically for judgment.
Yep.
It's this designated time when divine authority is unveiled to bring destruction to God's enemies. And the theological consensus in our sources explains that this final day of God's wrath actually unfolds in two distinct stages.
Oh, wait, so it's not just one single event at the very end of time.
No, it's not. The first stage happens right here, initiating in the second half of the 7-year apocalypse.
Got it.
Then the second stage occurs a full 1,000 years later at the final judgment day.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so the opening of the sixth seal is the exact trigger for that first stage. It kicks off this cascading sequential series of 6 distinct physical disasters. And the first of these is an earthquake.
An earthquake? But, I mean, we have to be clear here. This is a massive planetary earthquake, unlike anything in geological history, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the sources mention that regional quakes will be quite common in the first half of the apocalypse. Like, we've seen fault lines slip, we've seen cities fall, but this disaster shakes not just the earth, but the heavens as well.
Right. It's a total tectonic unzipping of the planet.
But wait, I have to ask, how does a single tectonic event, even a massive global one, instantly plunge the entire planet into darkness? Because that's what happens next in the text, right? You'd think an earthquake is strictly a ground-level problem.
Well, you have to factor in what happens when the Earth's crust fractures on a global scale. This connects the shifting tectonic plates directly to the immediate atmospheric consequences.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
Which brings us to the second disaster triggered by the seal, which is the darkening of the sun. The ancient accounts describe the sun becoming, quote, black as sackcloth made of hair.
So if an earthquake is causing this, we are definitely not talking about a celestial solar eclipse.
No, this is not the moon passing in front of the sun. A global, unprecedented fracturing of the Earth's crust activates volcanoes worldwide.
Oh, wow. Worldwide.
Worldwide. The sheer volume of magma suddenly exposed to the surface is unimaginable. Think about historical events like the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1852.
Yeah, that caused the year without a summer. Right.
Exactly. Or Krakatoa. Those were isolated, single-point eruptions that altered global temperatures and darkened skies for months.
And this is everywhere.
Right. Now multiply that by every major fault line on Earth erupting simultaneously. These volcanoes are spewing unfathomable amounts of ash, sulfur dioxide, and debris directly into the stratosphere.
So the entire globe is just blanketed in this thick, choking layer of volcanic particulate matter.
Exactly. It physically blocks out the sunlight.
That detail in the text, black as sackcloth made of hair, it is such a vivid, almost suffocating image. It gives you a real sense of texture.
It really does. And it is deeply symbolic as well as descriptive. You see, sackcloth was this very rough material made from black goat hair. It was traditionally used to make sacks, but more importantly, it was worn as mourning clothes. People wore it to physically demonstrate their sadness, their repentance, or just their absolute despair.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so by using that specific imagery, the prophecy is saying that the sun itself puts on a dark, doleful appearance. It's as if the very source of life and light in our solar system has literally gone into mourning.
The sun puts on mourning clothes. It is chilling. And because the atmosphere is now completely polluted with all this volcanic debris, the geological violence doesn't just stay during the day, it dictates what happens at night too.
That's right.
Which leads into the third disaster affecting the moon. The text says the whole moon became like blood.
And the physical mechanics behind this are a direct continuation of that choked atmosphere.
Right.
That same massive volume of volcanic ash acting as a blackout curtain for the sun, well, it acts as a dense filter in the night sky.
Okay, how does that work physically?
So when moonlight tries to penetrate an atmosphere filled with heavy smoke and particulate matter, a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering occurs.
Rayleigh scattering.
Yeah. The shorter wavelengths of light, so the blues and greens, they are scattered completely away by the ash. Only the longer red wavelengths actually make it through to the human eye on the surface.
Ah, so it gives the entire moon that terrifying, deep blood red hue.
Precisely.
You know, here's where it gets really interesting. Because as a modern reader, you might look at this ancient text with all its poetic, apocalyptic language. A sun wearing mourning clothes, a moon turning to blood, and you might think it's purely metaphorical magic.
Sure, yeah.
But what we are looking at is this fascinating blend of ancient prophetic language perfectly aligning with sound, devastating physical science.
It really is.
Massive global volcanism naturally causing extreme atmospheric particulate matter. It really helps you as a listener visualize the terrifying, choking physical reality on the ground. Like, you aren't just seeing a bad omen in the sky. You are breathing in this ash. You are wiping it out of your eyes.
It removes the fantasy element entirely. It grounds the terror in physics. You are trapped under a sky turning black and red, and you can't escape it because the atmospheric alteration is planetary.
Planetary. And as if looking at a black sun and a bleeding moon isn't terrifying enough, the narrative then shifts our gaze to what is actually falling out of that choked sky.
Right, moving to the next phase.
Yeah, this is disaster number 4. The stars of the sky fall to the earth. The text describes them falling as a fig tree casts its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind.
That's a very specific metaphor.
It is. Now, I'm looking at this literally and clearly. If a single actual star like our sun hit the earth would be instantly vaporized. The story would just end.
Exactly. And the biblical scholarship points out that we know these aren't literal stars for a few crucial reasons.
Right.
Aside from the fact that they would incinerate the Earth light years before impact, the stars are actually mentioned as still being in their place later on in the timeline, specifically during the 4th trumpet judgment.
Wait, hold on. For someone who doesn't have the whole apocalyptic sequence mapped out on a corkboard at home, what are the trumpet judgments in relation to this?
Good question. So the book of Revelation outlines judgments in 3 series of 7s. You have the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls.
Okay. Seals, trumpets, bowls.
Right. We are currently at the 6th seal. The trumpet judgments come later, and they escalate the devastation even further. So if the stars are still around during the later trumpet judgments, they aren't literally falling right now.
Got it. So we have to look at the linguistics to understand what is physically hitting the earth.
Let's dig into that original language. The Greek word translated as stars here is astiers.
Astiers.
Yeah. And in the historical and cultural context of the time, astiers was a broad term. It referred to any luminous heavenly body other than the sun or the moon.
So we are talking about an asteroid or a massive meteor shower.
Exactly. But not a beautiful meteor shower you watch from a blanket in your backyard.
No, not at all.
This is a devastating kinetic bombardment. The analogy of the unripe figs being shaken by a great wind is the absolute key to understanding the mechanics here.
How so?
Well, unripe figs cling very tightly to the branch. It takes a violent, relentless force to shake them loose in massive numbers. This describes a relentless pummeling of the Earth's surface by countless meteors.
Wow, so it's a literal cosmic bombardment plunging right through the volcanic ash.
Through the ash, yeah.
And then amidst this bombardment, we hit the 5th disaster. The text says, quote, "The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up."
This is a wild visual.
I have always struggled with this part. Like, are we supposed to take that literally? Because if the atmosphere suddenly unzips and just vanishes, Earth is exposed to the vacuum of space, the oceans boil off instantly, everyone suffocates in seconds, and again, the story is over. Timeline finished.
And that is the exact hurdle biblical scholars point out. We know the sky and the heavens aren't completely dissolved until the final judgment day, which is more than 1,000 years later in the text timeline.
Right.
So the source material identifies this as a phenomenon of perception.
Phenomenon of perception. So it's an optical illusion?
Yes, but a profoundly violent one. Think about the physics of what is happening in that moment. You have millions of tons of meteors entering a volcanic, ash-choked atmosphere at tens of thousands of miles per hour.
That's insane friction.
Right. The sheer friction of these objects burning up creates a literal canopy of fire overhead. Combined with the massive shock waves from the impacts displacing the air, the visual effect from the ground is so terrifying that, to the human eye, it appears as if the very fabric of the sky has been ripped open and just rolled away.
You know, to give you a visual analogy for this, imagine you were driving on a highway and a heavy rock kicks up and hits your windshield.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. The glass doesn't instantly vanish. It shatters into a million spider webs. Then, if the wind catches it just right, the safety layer kind of peels back. It folds in on itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, scale that up to the entire atmosphere. Between the heat of a global meteor shower incinerating the oxygen, the immense sonic shock waves from millions of impacts, and the dense distortion from all that volcanic ash, the sky itself would physically look like it was fracturing and peeling back.
It's an optical illusion of pure terror.
Your terror.
And that visual gives a great sense of the atmospheric trauma. But this cosmic trauma above connects directly back down to the final physical climax on Earth.
Back to the ground.
Back to the ground. Because while the sky is seemingly tearing open, the shifting crustal plates from the first disaster finally finish their work. This is the 6th and final disaster of this seal.
Every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Every single one.
Every single one. This is the culmination of the Earth's crustal instability. And there is a specific geological reality to note here, which is that islands are, structurally speaking, just partially submerged mountains.
Right. They're the peaks of underwater ranges.
Exactly. So when the tectonic plates undergo this kind of supreme catastrophic shift, the entire topography of the planet is completely rewritten. This completely dwarfs the damage of the initial global quake. Mountains don't just shake, they're geographically relocated.
That is mind-bending. And I really want to highlight what this actually means for human civilization and the infrastructure we rely on.
Oh, the socioeconomic impact is massive.
Because we aren't just talking about having to redraw our maps, right? We're talking about the ultimate infrastructure collapse. Think about human socioeconomic structure today. Where do we build our most secure facilities?
And the most stable places possible.
Exactly. Our military fortresses, our global seed vaults, our highly classified data centers, our billionaire doomsday shelters, we bore them deep into the bedrock of mountains.
Yep.
And where do the ultra-wealthy build their exclusive, isolated retreats? On private islands.
Which are now moving.
Right. If every mountain and island is moved violently out of its place, every single stronghold collapses. Yeah. There's literally no solid ground left for the government, the military, or the elite to stand on. Continuity of government is physically erased in minutes.
And when you look at that socioeconomic impact, this total infrastructural failure is what finally triggers the psychological collapse of humanity in the narrative.
It's the breaking point.
It is. The illusion of business as usual is totally dead. The safety nets of wealth, technology, and political power are completely gone.
Which brings us to the aftermath. The people who have been passionately worshiping this global dictator, the Antichrist, the people who have been hunting and persecuting believers, how do they react when their entire world physically fractures and all their money and power are literally buried under millions of tons of rock?
Well, they experience a psychological break resulting in a global panic of fear that completely erases all socioeconomic boundaries. Yeah, the text lists the demographic out very specifically to emphasize this point. It mentions the kings of the earth, the great men, the commanders, the rich, the strong, and every slave and free man.
Wow, it really is the great equalizer.
From the untouchable billionaire kings and military generals to the lowest enslaved individuals, they are all thrust into the exact same survival scenario.
There's nowhere left to pull rank.
Exactly. The infrastructure that separated the powerful from the powerless has literally been crushed.
So what do? Because the narrative says they hide themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. But wait, aren't these the exact same mountains that were just violently moved out of their places?
Yes. They are digging into the shifting, crumbling earth. It is the ultimate futile hiding place.
That is horrifying.
And in their panic, they actually speak to the rocks and the mountains.
You speak to them.
Yeah, they cry out and beg the mountains, quote, "Fall on us and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?"
Wow. So what does this all mean? The dark irony here is staggering. In their sheer terror, the global elite and the enslaved alike look at the crumbling, shifting rocks above them, and they decide that being crushed to death by a collapsing mountain is preferable to facing the divine authority standing before them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a profound shift. For the first time since the opening of the very first seal, humanity collectively stops blaming the climate, or tectonic shifts, or bad luck.
They stop hitting the snooze button.
Exactly. They finally acknowledge that this is not a natural disaster. They acknowledge the divine authority behind it. They admit out loud that the great day of God's wrath has come.
The veil of Mother Nature acting up is completely gone.
It's gone. But instead of repentance, there is just this desperate desire for annihilation just to escape accountability. They want the rocks to hide them from the wrath of the Lamb.
Which is such a striking juxtaposition, too.
Oh, absolutely. The Lamb is historically a symbol of innocence, gentleness and sacrifice. Yet here, it is the source of a wrath so profound that kings are begging for mountains to crush them. It underscores the severity of their choices.
Because they chose this path.
They did. The world has willingly followed the Antichrist. They have participated in a worldwide persecution, and they have ignored every previous warning.
Right.
The sixth seal is the point of no return, where the reality of their rebellion is physically manifested right upon them.
I mean, to recap this incredible sequence for you, we're exploring a timeline where a single, unprecedented global earthquake acts as the ultimate catalyst.
Right.
It fractures the planet's crust, triggering worldwide volcanoes that pump unimaginable amounts of ash into the stratosphere.
Choking the sky.
Yeah, that ash chokes the sun black and scatters the light to turn the moon blood red. And then this atmospheric nightmare is pounded by a relentless meteor shower, creating a canopy of fire and shock waves so violent the sky appears to shatter and roll up like a scroll.
It's a terrifying sequence of events.
It really is. And finally, the crustal shift reaches its peak, moving every single mountain and island, utterly destroying human infrastructure and leveling the playing field between the kings and the slaves. It forces every single person on Earth to look up and finally see what they've been trying to ignore.
It strips away every human construct, every bunker, every bank account, every political title, until only the raw reality of divine judgment remains.
It's incredibly sobering. And, here is something to chew on as we wrap up today's deep dive. We spent a lot of time today showing how this ancient poetic prophecy perfectly aligns with global tectonic and atmospheric science.
Right.
Which begs a massive question. Does this change how we should view ancient prophetic texts?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Are they just poetic theology written by men trying to describe a scary god? Or were these writers somehow shown a literal scientific preview of the end of the world thousands of years before we even understood the mechanics of a volcanic winter or a meteor shower? Because if the science holds up this perfectly, maybe the warning does too.
And I'll leave you with this lingering thought to build on that. If the apocalyptic horrors of the sixth seal, the sky tearing open, every mountain moving, global darkness, if all of that is only the beginning of the day of wrath and literally just the entry point into the final 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, well, what does that suggest about the unimaginable scale of what is yet to come before Judgment Day?
That is a terrifying thought to end on. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.
9.